Good evening, and welcome back to the Conservatarian Exchange on the Liberty Block, a show that's always ahead of the curve. Today we are hosted by yours truly, Mike. I am substituting for Rabbi Steve tonight, who should be back next week. We also have Dick and Ed M. Ed P is abroad, so it's just the trio tonight. So allow me to start off. The biggest story of the week is dear leader Alu welcoming a bundle of joy. So we wish him and his family Godspeed, all the best. Congratulations.
Congrats to Alu and his wife.
Indeed, indeed.
Congratulations.
All right, so I'll leave it to you two guys. There's a lot that we can discuss from this week. So what do you guys think is the number one story?
Oh, wow. There's so much out there. Why don't we start with this SAVE Act and the government shutdown and all that good stuff? And,
Yeah.
I notice on social media about every fourth story I see is some Democrat politician out there screaming how 69 million American women will not be able to vote because of Trump, because of the Republicans. He's taking away their right to vote.
Yeah. I
On
mean,
behalf of all married men, I only hope that they can't use credit cards either.
yeah.
It's such a dishonest and disingenuous
Yep.
campaign out there, and that the Democrats have no more shame than to outright lie to the American people
Hmm.
because they can't get their damn way, because they can't keep illegal aliens on the rolls. I've looked and I've seen at least 19 states that have reported a number, thousands of non-citizens on the voter rolls, and we have cases across the country right now with non-citizens being charged and or convicted
Yeah.
of voting in U.S. elections, federal elections.
Well, of course they are. Federal law almost requires it. The Motor Voter Act requires that if you get a driver's license or a state ID card, you must be provided with voter registration information. And in certain states, the voter registration is automatic. And you've
Yep.
got a whole bunch of states that are issuing driver's licenses and state IDs to illegals, which means that at a minimum, they're being given voter registration materials, but in some states, they're just being automatically registered. Now, I can't speak to all of the prosecutions that you're talking about or referring to, Dick, but I would bet dollars to donuts that the illegals that are getting the driver's licenses and IDs are not the ones that are actually voting. What's happening is the Democrat elected leaders are shuttling these people to the DMV, getting them their driver's licenses and or state IDs, and registering them themselves, and then these Democrat elected leaders know exactly which people are not going to show up at the polls, and they can use those votes, those registered voters, either to get mail-in ballots or to send somebody to show up on their behalf. That's
Listen,
what's going on,
I,
and it's
I don't
mandated
think,
by the Motor Voter Act, which is federal
yeah,
law.
I don't
So
think,
the Motor Voter Act requires that you be a citizen of the United States to
Yeah,
register to vote.
but all it requires is that you make a statement affirming that you're a citizen.
And a signature.
yeah. Listen, nobody's buying what the Democrats are selling at this point. And what's really fascinating about this is the polling where we always talk about what's an 80-20 issue. This is actually like an 80-20 issue in Trump's favor and the Republicans' favor. So there's even Democrats, which is almost hard to believe, that are on board with this. They believe you should be a citizen and you should be checked. But the bottom line is,
68% of Democrats.
yeah, the Democratic establishment, they want to be able to cheat. And it's as simple as that. And this is everything that's been going on for years. It went on during COVID and steroids, where they took advantage of everything that they could take advantage of to start the early voting and all that kind of stuff. That's persisting. And the Republicans are on the right side of this issue. The problem is they can't get it passed in the Senate. They can't get it passed, and we're back at the issue of the filibuster and if we want to nuke it or not.
So I've got this act pulled up at a section on it at the justice.gov, and this act only covers 44 of the 50 states, by the way.
Which act?
Idaho, huh?
Which act?
The Voter Act. Idaho, Minnesota, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Wisconsin, and Wyoming are all exempt from the act. We do have some illegals voting in Wisconsin, Minnesota. I know about Minnesota rather. And when you talk about the problem you were talking about, Ed, with them knowing who was registered and who was not going to vote and what have you, interesting stuff that just came out. Once again, I'm going back to Atlanta on this whole thing. is almost half of the ballots that were sent out for the 2020 election for voting by mail were returned non-deliverable, and almost half of those that were returned because there's some way that there's a record of them being sent back by the postal system to the counties. Mm-hmm. They no longer seem to exist. It seems the ballots that were in those envelopes must ended up in the vote count, which means you had folks at the boards of elections filling out these returned ballots.
Mm-hmm. Mike, at the risk of jumping ahead to something that you maybe want to talk about later, you just said that the Republicans just can't get it passed, and I want to contrast that to Mamdani in New York, mm-hmm. who went to Hochul. He said, "I want an income tax rate, income tax increase on millionaires." Yeah. She said no. So what does he do? He comes back and he says, "All right, well then we're going to implement a property tax increase on middle class people, and it's good." And he doesn't say this, but the undertone is, and that's going to hurt you, Hochul, way more than a tax on the millionaires, because people are going to say, "Don't tax me, tax them." And my point about it is, the socialists and the communists and the Democrat Party know how to fight. They never give up. Mm-hmm. And if they don't get their way on the first shot, they just fire a different cannon. And our guys don't even know how to put the cannonball in the cannon.
What other cannon is there to fire other than nuking the filibuster?
They can start by making them stand up and do a talking filibuster. If you don't want to nuke the whole filibuster, make them go on record and let them stand there and read the phone book into the record and let them sit there and explain why they oppose the bill.
But that doesn't get the bill passed.
What I think what I pointed out at the beginning of this whole discussion is that's meaningless. They don't care if they look like absolute jackasses. They don't care. I mean, look at this whole thing that we got later on to discuss about somebody went over to Munich and made an absolute jackass of herself.
Okay, well, you have to do something. You have to fight. And I mean, you can nuke the filibuster. I would say it's better, not better. I would say that before you nuke it, you should lay the foundation.
How about we just tie it to this DHS funding bill and say, this is it. And if you keep DHS shut down for the next 10 years, you keep it shut, or for the next 3 years, you keep it shut down for the next 3 years. We'll stop all flights. Eventually, the scream will be loud enough.
I don't know about that.
The only problem I see with that, Dick, is that so much of the Trump agenda is predicated on a supercharged economy, and if you shut down air travel, you're slowing down the economy.
Yeah, there's other things that are going to be a hell of a lot more painful than what it does simply to the economy.
Listen, historically, the Republicans have not won these government shutdown fights. It doesn't mean
historically they've been cowards.
I mean, well, this is all true, but I mean, listen, we always talk about the media, and unfortunately, the media is going to go to bat for the Democrats when these things happen. It's the way it is. So, Trump has to use the bully pulpit. They do. Yeah, they have to fight. You got to fight harder. But I mean, talking on the Senate floor isn't going to get the bill passed. There's only one way I really see this bill getting passed. And they got
the State of the Union next week, Mike. Maybe Trump can use the State of the Union as a platform to.
Well, he should. He's got the bully pulpit every day.
The Democrats have timed the shutdown specifically to interrupt the State of the Union.
How do you figure? How is it going to interrupt the State of the Union?
It's not going to stop him from giving it, but it's going to give them their counterbalance. He's just trying to destroy America. He ain't trying to fix it.
I mean, the only other thing accurate is, like you say all the time, they have the purse strings, and they should threaten all these blue states and say, we're going to pull every freaking dime.
Yep.
That's why I say go ahead, attach it to the DHS funding, because that's FEMA.
I also think
shut off every FEMA dollar to a blue state.
I also think that part of the Trump strategy is that Team Trump expects 2026 to be a roaring economy year, and that the Democrats' claims that he's trying to destroy the country are going to be so laughable in the next 3 to 6 months that nobody's going to take them seriously. That's what I think is part of his plan.
So I want to
don't
take
know.
a slight fork in the road here. Not a total leaving, but a slight fork in the road here as we're talking about this. Did either of you happen to catch the White House press briefing today?
Did not.
Did not catch today's.
So toward the end of things, Carolyn Levitt, that was one of the things I had on my phone actually, was taking questions as she normally does. And some reporter, some guy in there, asked a question. I can't remember the exact phrasing of the question, but it was essentially, this being Black History Month, how does Trump address all of the accusations of racism? He's a racist. And why is this, and Levitt makes a comment, or, why isn't this more in the news? And she makes a comment. Really, are you serious with that question?
Yeah.
You
What's
I
interesting
will have
about
my
that, Dick?
staff, pardon me?
What's interesting about that is, another potential topic today was Jesse Jackson. And I don't know if you saw, there was a video circulating from a number of years back of him praising Trump and what he had been doing for the Black community. It's like, you can't make this stuff up.
Well, that's where I was headed, because that press conference was literally right before the opening of a Black History Month event at the White House,
Yeah.
with Trump and all these Black entrepreneurs and what have you,
Yeah.
that, one after the other getting up and talking about how his policies have
Yeah.
helped the country.
This stuff is just, it's never going to change. It's one of the top tools in their toolbox is to
So,
whip out the R word.
I learned a long time ago that if you don't have something nice to say about somebody, you don't say anything. So Jesse Jackson died. That's it.
he was a great friend of Trump right up until Trump decided to run for office, and then Trump was the worst devil in the universe.
Of course.
How much money did Trump give to Jackson and Sharpton and all the rest of them over the years for their various causes?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm going to be so kind. I mean,
Okay.
honestly, like he was the first like real shakedown artist when it came to using race to get his way. And I can't even remember how many companies that he employed that tactic on. But he was the first one that I really remembered doing that, and then it became Sharpton. And I'm sorry, I don't see him being a good guy. Let's put it that way. He also ended up being an adulterer and had a kid out of wedlock and things like that. But when it comes to the
You
country,
mean like I Have a Dream?
yeah, when when it comes to the country, he was a damaging figure.
Martin Luther King Jr. had his share of issues with infidelity and
Mhm.
the rest.
Yeah,
Spousal abuse and
yeah. Well, I think otherwise there were ideas that he put forth that we could agree with, and I can't say the same about Jesse Jackson. Anyway. All right. Goodness, there's so many things to get to. The Marco Rubio address in Munich, that had to be one of the best addresses I've seen in a long time. And man, he, he he put into words all the things that Trump never could about the Trump agenda. The way he did it, the tone he struck was perfect. It was fascinating to me, if you watch the whole thing, the applause that he was getting from that audience too. I mean, they were all pretty much right with him. He was talking about immigration and the culture. We want you with us. He said maybe at times we're a little too direct in our ways, which is a nice, beautiful way of defending Trump the way Trump goes about things in a sense. But it was a beautiful, wonderful speech. It was a defense of Western civilization. It was a defense of European culture and how we descended from that in a lot of ways, which is of course true. Um, Damn, I mean, it was good. We need more of that. Um, the question ultimately is, did they get the message? And on top of that, was the message received here at home? Because let's face it, we have half the country that probably didn't like that speech very much. And of course, AOC was one of them while she was over there. By the way, it's fun doing the podcast from from south of the equator today, by the way, guys. Anyway.
Don't stoop to her level.
You mentioned a lot of good things in his speech, but I thought just as important were his discussions on the social and political issues, deindustrialization,
Yes.
the breakdown of culture, and the rest of it. And certainly that's been hitting Europe a lot harder so far than it has hit the U.S. I mean,
Yeah.
we're starting to feel those impacts, but it started in Europe in a
Absolutely.
significant way.
I'm
And
not sure how far behind we are.
a decade, maybe.
Probably
Um,
less.
I mean, when you look at the percentages there of the Muslims versus what we got in this country, yeah, it's
Mhm.
a huge influence in this country, and more for political reasons than
Yeah.
for actual population representation. But
Yeah. Listen,
um,
and I know like Daniel does a great job of describing what's going on in the UK with freedom of speech and everything like that, and how the Islamists have taken over. So does Avery Day when you watch some of her videos out there on Instagram or Facebook, because she actually lived there for a few years and she talks about that often. And a recent video of her showed how they have like a blue line along the streets and the sidewalks, basically telling you you got to stay there for your own safety. The minute if you don't have your phone strapped to your wrist, somebody's going to take it. She goes on and on and on about how dangerous it is there and how upside down it is there. Um, I unfortunately I just like I don't know how far behind we really are. That's sort of the direction we're still heading, and that to me was part of the backdrop of Rubio's speech. Like, he's talking about Europe, but damn, it's here. We got a big problem here, and you got to apply the same, lesson of that speech, if you will, here at home.
well, one of his closing lines in his speech, and I'm here today to leave it clear that America is charting the path for a new century of
Yeah.
prosperity, and that once again we want to do it together with you, our
Mhm.
cherished allies and oldest friends.
Yeah.
And over the years, I had a lot of questions about Rubio, and maybe it's just because he never had a chance to really get on stage where he could deal with issues. He was responding to things for campaigns and what have you. But you listen to him answering questions, and in my mind's eye, I think he's been the most impressive of Trump's cabinet secretaries in his second term. His grasp of the various international things going on, and it's geopolitics, it's economics, it's all rolled into
Yeah.
one ball of wax.
Yeah. I mean,
I
his stock has gone up after that address. There's no question about that. I still have reservation, based on some of the past, but if he's
I,
trying to rehabilitate himself and prime himself for a run in 2028, he's on the right track.
I agree with everything you guys have said. I think that Rubio is doing a fantastic job as Secretary of State. I'll never be able to forget that he was the leader of the Gang of Eight 15 or so years ago, which called for amnesty for illegals during Obama's presidency. He seems to have learned his lesson, but in the back of my mind, I'll always wonder, is he just telling us all what we want to hear? But that said, his speech in Munich was beyond magnificent. I would say it was powerful. It hit every important issue. It dotted every I and crossed every T. Um, it was unifying in a way that very few people are able to be unifying today. Uh, I think before he made that speech, many people would have said it's going to be really hard to find a unifying message for Europe and America, but he was able not only to come up with one, but to masterfully deliver a
Mhm.
unifying speech. Um, I think that AOC and Newsom uh, presented a really stark contrast, not just for us, but I think in particular for the Europeans. I think that to the extent that there are people that aren't brain dead in Europe, they looked at what Rubio or they heard what Rubio said and they heard what AOC said and they heard what Newsom said. And I think that all the non-brain dead people are looking at Rubio and saying that's what we want.
Yeah.
And he was able to, when Trump does it, he does it in such a Trump can't open his mouth without bragging about all that he's done and all that he's given you.
Yeah.
And it's just there's a natural off-putting to those comments, even when he's being accurate and truthful, without hyperbole. Rubio had none of that in his speech.
Yeah.
Everything was, reaching out and saying that we're children of Europe. and that we want you strong. We want strong allies, that we don't benefit from weak allies. We want you to be able to defend yourselves. We want you to be proud of your cultures, proud of your heritage. We don't want you,
Yeah.
we want you to industrialize, not deindustrialize, as Dick said. His speech was just, it hit every important issue, and he
Yep.
did it in less than a half hour. It was like
Yeah, it wasn't that long. It really wasn't.
22 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
And he hit so many themes and with just the right note.
Well, you know what?
It's
It tells you
yeah.
too. Words matter. Things like that matter. Yes, of course, actions matter. But you know what? Reagan went in and he said, "Tear down this wall," and those three words had all the impact in the world.
Yep.
Right?
You know,
He took it right. So in a way, this is probably since that time, that Reagan speech just might have been the most impactful address delivered to Europe by an American. I
so
can't
you know,
think of one.
you bring that up, Mike, the tear down the wall speech, and that last cruise I went on a
Forward.
little over a year ago. Peter Robinson was one of our guest speakers, and he was the one that put that line in the speech.
Yeah.
And the whole discussion on that, because that line was in the speech, it was struck out by the Department of Defense. It was in the speech, it was back in the speech, it was struck out by the Department of State, it was back in, it was struck out by the CIA. I don't know how many more times it was struck out.
Right.
And literally, Reagan's walking out to the helicopter to head over to Europe, head out to get on Air Force One to head over to Europe. And the White House staff is running out with a new folder with the latest revision of the speech. That once again, they put that line back in.
Yep.
So
Reagan's like he didn't want to take it down. He stuck to his guns, and what he knew exactly wanted to do, and he wasn't going to be talked out of it. That's for sure. So of course, Ed, you touched on the flip side of this. I really didn't see Newscomb, in Munich, but I saw a little bit of AOC, and she was asked a question in a panel, and all you got was humming, humming, humming. She couldn't answer it, and then there was the whole, obviously what I just alluded to before, that Venezuela is south of the equator, and she also made remarks about, that the Cowboys didn't come from Spain. It didn't begin with Spanish, and actually it did.
yeah, I think she might have
completely made
just
a fool of herself on the world stage. And it's like, honey, go back to bartending or something. I don't know.
she might have just torpedoed her chances at the White House.
You think so? I don't think so. I don't think so at all.
There's too many Democrats that are coming out, and just even Democrats are roasting her.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a poll. It was fleeting. I went past that. I don't know where it was from, but it had Kamala basically in the lead, and then Newscomb second, and then AOC. I was kind of
Yeah, but that
surprised
poll was taken before.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
And I mean, you watched the debate with Harris and Trump. Can you imagine what it's going to be like on a stage with Newsom and AOC and Harris in an actual debate?
Who on the Democrat side doesn't have tremendous weaknesses from things they've said or done in the past? I mean, maybe the Pennsylvania governor, Josh, whatever his last name is,
Shapiro.
Josh Shapiro. He might not have too many skeletons in his closet, but all of them have things that are, if from the Republican perspective, they've got, locker room material, bulletin board material on the wall. And
so here's a real interesting one that was in a news article today, was on Stephen A. Smith. And I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Of course.
Mike, you should definitely be, but I don't know if you are, Ed. You say you are, okay. And the article was, the essence of it was that if the Democratic Party does to him what in 2028, what they did to Kennedy in the 2024 election, that the Democrats will absolutely lose the 2028 presidential election. Because all his following in the sports world, he'll bring them along.
Stephen A. Smith?
Yep.
I don't know how seriously to take him, anything, but
I've
listen,
listened to
anything that
politically
damages him, if it
speaking,
does, fine.
He seems to be a lot more sensible than any of the front runners out there. I'm not saying I'm for a Democrat. It's not what I'm saying.
Listen, he has a certain degree of common sense, but if he really had common sense, he wouldn't be a Democrat.
Exactly.
He still stands with it. You know what I mean? So I don't know what to say. All right. So, God, there's like a little of this, a little of that. Let's turn our attention to the latest trans killer, unfortunately, in Rhode Island. Um,
Why?
why? Why? Because it's
Yeah,
obviously
why is that
important.
an important story?
Because it's a part and parcel of the left continuing to try to normalize insanity, right?
Well, go
Yeah.
back to last week. You got the one in Canada. Same thing. It's
Yeah.
every week.
So, I mean, in case anybody doesn't know the story, there's a guy in Rhode Island who was a dad. He was married, had kids, and was transitioning. He shows up at the kids' hockey game in a dress, and decides at that point to go postal, flip out, turns a gun on his wife. He killed his wife. He killed the kid, and some other
Back
family
up.
members also got
You got to
injured.
back up a whole bunch
Okay,
because there had been numerous issues already
right.
with involving law enforcement with
Mm-hmm.
domestic violence and what have you out of this guy. I mean, um, and it appears most of this all started when he started to transition.
Yeah.
I think it was 2020. I think was the when they said it started. I don't have that in front of me, but all these issues started when he started to transition. And at some point, uh, people have to wake up and
Mm-hmm.
recognize we're dealing with a mental illness,
Right. And I
plain and
think
simple.
Ed P talked about this quite a bit on the last podcast. So to that end, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but he talked about the drugs and the hormones and everything like that. So not only are we, trying to normalize this behavior, but then we're medicating these people. And so unless we do wake up, Dick, there's going to be more of this. So I think as a society, it is an important issue, clearly, that we need
50 years
to
ago,
deal
if you
with.
said that you were the king or queen of England, we smiled and put you in a mental institution. Today, you do the equivalent and say that you're
Mhm.
a member of the opposite sex, and we give you a trophy and we start chopping, body parts off. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'm not sure that we need to add too much more on that one. Um, we talked about Jesse Jackson. We talked about Mom Donnie. Dick, I think there was something else that you were looking to bring up as well, the Iran democracy panel, if you want to
Yeah,
take the
this has
baton on
been
that one.
real interesting, and really we have to go back and we look at Trump coming into office. And in his first days in office, he passed an executive or put out an executive order. Passed isn't the right word. And I've got that right here. If it doesn't keeps throwing me out, but he put out an executive order naming all of these UN agencies and organizations that we were going to pull out of, uh, barring significant change. And one of the first things on Rubio's agenda was reviewing all of those different programs. And you know, you look at the history. In this week, we're talking about Iran, and Iran was named as the vice chair of the UN body promoting democracy and women's rights. And there's a country that is so far from having either that it's absolutely ludicrous. But this has been a pattern of the UN for at least 30 years. You looked at the panel on human rights here a few years ago, and it was literally a list of the nations of the world with the worst human rights violations.
Dick, that's inherent in the creation of the UN in the first place. I mean,
I understand.
if you're going to have an international body that treats the worst dictatorships in the freest countries as equals, well, of course the worst dictatorships are going to be the ones that benefit, and the free countries are going to be the ones that suffer. I mean, that's just the nature of what the UN is.
And it supports Trump's agenda. And multiple stories in online. If you go look of various politicians and countries complaining about the U.S. pulling out. And I was trying to find a story just recently. The UN has announced that they have severe budget shortfalls. They're going to have to let huge
Yeah.
quantities of staff go and all the rest of this. And basically, like NATO, relying on America for defense for I don't know what,
Hmm.
7 decades, 8 decades.
Yeah.
The
I'm
UN
glad we
has
brought this
relied.
up. I'm glad we brought this up because that was actually one of the few things in Rubio's speech that I didn't
I was
agree
just
with.
about to mention it too, that
He did, Rubio paid homage to the UN and
did he? I
tried
didn't,
to get
that's
the
not what
UN
I
to
saw.
step up the way he has. What?
I thought
What?
he was calling them inept and
Well, he was
basically, you know,
he was basically saying
worthless.
the same thing to the UN that he was saying to Europe. We want you to succeed. We want you to do well. You're not doing your job now, but you can do better. Instead of
Well, but
saying there's nothing that you have
I
no
think that
place in
that
the
was
world.
somewhat diplomatic. He diplomatically was saying they were worthless. They've done nothing. It's like if we didn't do anything, all these issues. He talked about a litany of conflicts in the world, and it was like we had to do something. Trump had to do something with the UN. What did they do? Nothing. 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 So
well,
I thought
Right.
he
But
was
then
being
he exhorted
critical,
them
but
to
he
do
did it in
better.
a beautiful way.
Right. And he exhorted them to do better.
well,
So what?
absolutely. That's what Trump was doing and what Rubio did in Europe with NATO.
But my
You
point
aren't
is, I
doing,
don't
you
think
aren't
that
carrying your weight. If you don't start pulling your weight, we're not going to defend you.
I don't think that the UN can do better. It's inherent in its existence that the bad guys are going to dominate. I mean, that's just, if you mix poop with food, you don't get part food, part poop. You get a whole plate of poop.
I disagree that that's inherent in their existence because their existence, much like NATO, was based on American money. If America doesn't pay for it, it doesn't
Yeah, but
exist.
no, we shared certain values and goals with the NATO countries.
I
The
understand.
UN allows countries that are our enemies, that hate us, that hate our way of life, that are
Go with
totally
the example that you
incompatible with
started
us to
this
have a
with.
voice.
Go with the example you started this with, which is Iran on the, International
Yeah,
Council for Women's Rights
yeah.
and Human Rights, or whatever it was
And,
called.
and we just announced pulling more money out of the UN. UN's failing. What's going to happen when they don't have U.S. money? UN's going to crumble.
Good.
The UN is 100% reliant on U.S. funding.
Yeah.
I'm not saying other countries don't give them money. Other countries obviously do give money, but without the U.S. dollars, without the money that the U.S. pays into UN, it crumbles.
Yeah. But the whole reason for the organization's existence, it's failed in that mission. So,
Well, I've spoken before on genocide. I brought up that thing here a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about the whole thing with how we deal with Iran right now. And if you look back, and I did a paper on this for Liberty a few years ago, and look back, and they passed that UN resolution on genocide back in, I believe it was 47. I think it was 47. And you look at the number of genocide events by their own definition since then, and the UN has a horrible record of responding to genocides.
yeah,
I think there's been maybe 2 events that they actually responded in a fashion to do anything about the stop.
right. I mean, ultimately, when we have any kind of an alliance or part of any organization, it should be there to advance our values and our ideas, to advance freedom. And the UN doesn't do that. We should have been out of there a long time ago. It's worthless. I'm not sure there's anything much to add to that. Obviously, there are ongoing talks with Iran. Apparently, there was a second round underway. I don't see anything coming out of this still. I know we touched on it last week. I don't know if it's just a ruse to say we tried, and that's just a prelude to us, conducting Operation Strike against them or not. But that's where we are now.
So the Ford, we already had a carrier parked over there. I forget which one, but we got the Ford en route. Over the past couple of days, we have flown a number of F-35s over into the region. Those F-35s took along with them a new air-to-air missile.
Yeah.
We've put together a couple of new air-to-air missiles that are just phenomenal in their capabilities. To go after other aircraft and to go after drones. One of the new ones that we have just put out, it was remarkable. The Defense Department just let a contract for these things. And I say just, I don't know exactly how many weeks ago that they let the contract, but it's for tens of thousands of these things, these rockets, essentially. If you remember the old Vietnam, they had the rocket pods on the helicopters you saw. Basically, they look like those rocket pods, and they've taken those 2.75-inch rockets, taken them apart, and in the middle of them, between the fuel and the warhead, they put in a seeker. And now they can put multiples of these pods on these F-35s, F-15s, F-16s. Right now, I haven't heard on F-18s. So that now for every one of those pods, you've got 7 rockets that have seekers that will go after these drones. And then you have a new capability with the 35 I wasn't aware of, that we don't have with any others. They can actually fire at their missiles at aircraft behind them.
Yeah. Listen, I don't think there's any question we could annihilate them.
Well, we're moving all the resources over there to do just that.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens, because again, you can't amass all those forces there and then just back down and not have a red line, and not act when that red line.
What makes you think that Trump is going to back down?
I don't know. Maybe this is just all bluff. I don't know.
The real question, I mean, to me, the real issue is, is Trump really willing to make a deal? Because there is no deal you can make with the mullahs.
Exactly.
And is Trump just using the possibility of a deal to buy enough time to get another aircraft carrier into the region? Or is Trump really looking for some face-saving deal for the mullahs that, basically kicks the can down the road? That's the real question. I don't think that he's bluffing with all the firepower that he's brought to the region. I said that probably a month ago or several weeks ago. I do think that he's going to take them out. But he did lose his nerve when it came to Minneapolis and with the blue cities here in the U.S.
I don't know if he ever had the nerve.
Well, fair enough.
I honestly don't think he ever wanted to be known as a president that had to invoke the Insurrection Act and had the military getting involved, and he didn't want that imagery.
I mean, I agree with that, except my only disagreement is he wouldn't be the first one to have invoked the Insurrection Act. Other presidents have done so in the modern time, let alone, in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kent State is remarkable in that. We sent in the National Guard, and we also sent in the 101st Airborne Division.
Rodney King riots, Eisenhower during the 50s.
Yeah.
I think it was Kent State that was 101st. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
The billions of dollars that it's taken to put the resources over there, because just moving that carrier over there is expensive as hell. Granted, they're out on the sea anyway. They've got the point. They're moving all that. All those fighters that they're moving into the region, all those tankers, that's a lot of fuel. That's a lot of money doing that. And you don't move those fighters without the tankers to keep them fueled up. He is either very serious and we're going to have change, or he's trying to put enough fear of God into them that they'll believe that is the case.
Well, other than the economy, this is clearly potentially the biggest issue of the year. If we go in, that's immediately becomes the issue of the year. So
it ain't going to be Venezuela.
No, it'll be a totally different
operation. We'll get that out of their mind. It's going to be Venezuela.
You're talking about regime change completely. It's a totally different undertaking, and you just hope if it happens, it doesn't backfire in any way, shape, or form like Iraq did, or other places that have turned into adventures. Hopefully, there's possibly anything worse than the mullahs being there, but you never know, I guess.
I don't know what it would be.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope you're right. I would like to think not. Okay. I don't know. I'll let you guys go if you have any other big issues you want to touch on, because I have a couple of other tidbits that I wanted to touch on before the show ends. Go ahead. Any big ones?
There are a couple of things out there. You had Tim Walz in Minnesota, saying that the federal government should pay for all the I don't know. I'm not even sure the alleged damage that was caused in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
The only damage that was caused was done by Walz's stand down order to the police. If the police took their job seriously, there wouldn't have been damage. But more fundamentally, it's the perfect example of what happens when you let up on a bully. When you back down, the bully just keeps coming for more.
Right.
And it's not just in Minnesota. The that sewage leak in Maryland. It's the same issue. Wes Moore, governor of Maryland, is now demanding that the federal government pay for Maryland's complete ineptness in being able to handle a sewage system. And, again, the federal government that's not its responsibility. And, these governors think that they can just extort money from the federal government like Joe Biden's still president.
Yeah.
And, hopefully Trump is going to stand up to them. I know he responded to Wes Moore by saying, well, you better ask me nicely. But he also said that it's an environmental disaster. And at some point, the feds will intervene, but I don't think he's going to give them money.
Yeah.
So that's one story. I mean, I don't know if you guys have any takes on it.
Well, I mean, obviously, it takes real chutzpah on the part of Walt, who was the governor during the riots after George Floyd. So he didn't care about all the damage that was happening to his state and the city of Minneapolis at that time. So that's rather ironic and amusing, to say the least. But otherwise, I mean, these blue cities, why should we give them a dime?
We shouldn't.
They didn't get a dime. Like, you want a dime? And the sanctuary states and sanctuary cities. Okay.
Mike, I'm sure you remember when Cory Booker, senator from New Jersey, when we were both living
Spartacus.
there.
Yes.
When Cory Booker threatened to withhold transportation funds if Republican states didn't fall into line on some issue.
Mm-hmm.
I forget it. I don't even remember if that was during the Biden presidency or the Obama presidency.
Yeah.
But he threatened to withhold highway funds, and that was a big deal. And the Republican governors all fell into line.
Yeah.
We started off the show with me saying that, or I don't know if I started off the show, but when I mentioned Mamdani earlier, I said he knows how to fight. I mean, the guy's 34 years old and hasn't done a damn thing in his life, but he knows how to fight. Republicans
how to
need to be able to fight. What?
He knows how to destroy.
Well,
So yeah, you say he knows how to fight. Kids throwing a tantrum on the floor that doesn't say they know how to fight. It says they know how to throw a tantrum.
yeah, but I mean, look at what he's doing. He's putting Hochul in a real pickle. He's making
And a
it
kid
so that
throwing a tantrum on the dang grocery store floor isn't putting the mother in a pickle.
look, I'm no Mamdani apologist. I can't stand the commie. I'm not defending him, but I am saying he does know how to find the pressure point the way a good community organizer knows how to find the pressure points, and he's putting pressure on Hochul. And if he winds up raising property taxes, he thinks that he doesn't have to run for re-election for 4 more years or 3.5 years. Hochul is running for re-election in the next 10 months.
Well, he'd have to successfully pin it on her, and she.
But he is. That's what he's doing. That was he. If you listen to what he said, we don't want to do it this way. This is going to hurt.
I
all
understand
the
what he's saying, but is he going to be successful with that point of attack, or is it?
I think in the Democrat Party, I think yes, he will be.
I
Mark
don't
my
know,
words.
maybe it works in the city. If I live in upstate New York, I'm like, go ahead and raise your property taxes in the city. I don't give a crap. Go ahead.
Well, that's
Vote it down.
Republicans. But I think
I don't know.
Democrats,
I don't know if he wins this argument.
I think Hochul is going to be painted as somebody who allowed tax increases on middle class and lower income people. That's what Mamdani's fight. That's what he's planning to do, and he's going to war against Hochul if she doesn't give him his income tax increase.
Well, there you go. And he's being a bully, and she better stand up to the bully, just like you were saying. That's how you got to deal with bullies.
I get it. I'm not.
What's she supposed to do?
True.
Cave?
I think she's in a no-win situation, and I mean, frankly,
Maybe,
that's part
I
of
don't
why
know.
I think the Democrat Party is in a no-win situation, because ultimately their policies are destructive, and
Well,
as long as you've got Trump's contrast of successful policies, destruction is not going to succeed when it's up against.
I think it's easier to be a destroyer and a nihilist, right?
Of course,
It's easier. It's easier to be a
course.
Mamdani. So
Right, but again, what I'm saying is he's got a strategy. His strategy is
I understand.
I'm gonna make Hochul squirm, and I'm gonna create the conditions where a big tax increase in New York City on average people is going to be blamed on her for not allowing a tax on millionaires and billionaires. That's the strategy. That's the Democrat playbook, and I think she's going to cave. I mark my words. I bet you that his income tax
Be a big mistake.
increase is going to get granted. Hochul is going to cave on that.
It'll be worse for her, I think.
I'm kind of happy to see the fight because either one is going to be disastrous for New York.
Yeah.
Throw out this billionaire wealth tax, and the billionaires are going to be gone. I mean, this goes to another story on the other coast. I'll come back to, but they're only going to take so much, and they say, it is cheaper for me to spend what it costs to get out of this state, to rehire new employees, do all this other stuff, than to pay these taxes. And now you've lost your tax base. And whether it's because of the wealth tax from the governor or whether it's raising property taxes, doesn't matter. You destroy the city.
Yeah.
I think that they're okay with that. And I think that's already happening, frankly.
When they destroy the city, they won't have any votes.
Oh,
People
yes, they
remember
will.
that.
Dick,
Who are they going to blame it on but themselves?
Look at all these inner cities in the country. They are 90% Democrat enclaves.
And they haven't gone down the route yet that Mondami's taken New York. Yeah, they've gone down a long way.
Dick, you're in North Carolina, and I mean, I've been in North Carolina. I've lived in North Carolina. It doesn't have slums the way New York City and Baltimore and Detroit and Chicago have slums. It just doesn't. And this whole notion that chasing out the good people is going to leave a trail of destruction that's going to wake up the people left behind, that is just not the historical record. It hasn't happened like that anywhere. It just gets worse and worse. The Democrats tighten their control because all opposition leaves.
And eventually the people revolt.
Where? Give me an example where that's happened.
Romania.
Okay. I mean, that's
obviously it hasn't sunk to the point in this country yet to drive people to that point.
I've been in the slums. I mean, I still remember when I was in law school working in a housing rights clinic and going into public housing. And this is 35 years ago. I mean,
you're suggesting this problem's only going to be in the slums. It's not going to only be in the slums. It's going to be in the whole damn city.
Right. The whole damn city is going to turn into a slum. That's your prediction.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is, I don't think that's going to weaken Democrat control. I think it's going to strengthen Democrat control. And frankly, that's why they're okay with it. They look at all these slums around the country and they control them with an iron fist. There's no Republicans anywhere.
Their goal is equal misery for everybody.
I looked at a picture from New York City this morning. It was a pile of trash about 8 foot high, 9 foot high. It was a full lane wide of the road. It extended for about 180 foot.
Yeah.
If that's what New Yorkers want, then that's what they deserve.
Well, that's what's going to happen. We're talking about Kami Mamdani, but let's talk about the Islamic side of Mamdani for a second, because one story that happened a little over a week ago was the new Catholic archbishop was being ordained. And historically, they can't even find an example where there was a New York mayor who did not attend that. And we have one now, and that's Mayor Mamdani, who decided he wasn't going to show up and claimed he had some sort of scheduling conflict. So he basically dissed all the Catholics in the city. And can't say I'm surprised. The true colors coming out.
Well,
everything he does is deliberate. Every word is deliberate. We talked about this before. Everything's deliberate. So him not attending this event was deliberate.
Take a look across the river in your state. Take a look a little bit further south in Virginia. 2 new governors. Yeah. How are they any different?
Well, mine flies a helicopter.
One in Virginia was
listen, there's a difference because Mamdani represents and embodies not just the communist side that the leftists are embracing, but he is the Islamist side of the coin too. And that to me is why he's the double threat and has been from the beginning. Interestingly, in New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill's congressional seat opened up, and the Democrats in their, I guess, primary is the best way to call it, have selected another in the image of Kami Mamdani. So little by little, we're getting more and more of these candidates. But of course, on the other side, the Republicans have some guy who's like kind of like anti-ICE and, totally milquetoast. And there's a chance to win the seat back from the Democrats. But of course, the Republicans in New Jersey are going to blow it, more than likely. Yep. All right. Any other?
I think we're going to blow it in North Carolina with our Senate race. So.
Well, the hope for North Carolina is that you start getting all the Virginians, the conservative Virginians, to come over the border soon.
Was that it?
That's the hope for North
I
Carolina.
said, you think
Go.
Cooper is going to win?
Yes. The short answer is yes. The reason why is uh, is yeah.
Watley?
Huh?
Watley?
Yeah, Mike Watley um, is not going to be able to generate turnout, and it's an off election year.
Yeah.
He certainly has alienated plenty of Republicans, that's for sure.
I mean, if you look at our field, and this name won't mean much to probably most of the audience, Mike, you should remember, Ed, Michelle Morrill is on the ticket running for
Michelle who?
Morrill. She ran for superintendent of public instruction the last time around and got thoroughly trounced.
Yeah.
You know, this right now on the Republican field is just how can we destroy the other person? And you got Mike Watley running that, you know, I'll give credit, and I've said this 100 times, probably different groups. I'll give him credit on the election integrity effort that he mounted in this state and that he mounted for Trump nationally. That did a lot of good. But ask him about any other policy, and you'll never get an answer.
Yeah. Okay. So
He'll support Trump.
a couple of my little tidbits. I don't know if you guys have been watching the Olympics at all. It makes me think about when we were younger, and I always look to the Berlin Wall falling and as a turning point in our history, obviously world history. But I think in a lot of ways we lost our way since then because we had the contrast of good versus evil, the evil empire, America, and in some ways I sort of miss the Olympics being having that. You know what I mean? It was the U.S. versus the Soviets, and it's kind of gone. We don't have that rivalry there anymore. So in a way, I feel like we've lost something with the Olympics since then. But one story caught my attention this week. I don't know if you guys heard this too. There's a U.S. athlete who has I guess an American parent.
Who's competing for
I think-
China?
First generation Chinese woman.
Right. One of the parents is from China, but she's a U.S. citizen,
Yes.
and she is representing China at the Olympic Games. To me, that's the villain of the week right there. I don't even know what to say. It's a betrayal. You're betraying your own country to represent a communist dictatorship that treats women like crap. I mean, it's galling. And why is she doing it? Apparently, she's doing it for a buck, best as I can tell. And so, just so get her name, so we have it on record for the show. Eileen Gu, I believe is the way you pronounce it. Eileen Gu, G-U. So she is a freestyle skier who made a conscious choice to diss her own country to represent communist China.
So I think you can
Gross.
trace this back, and I'm not sure without doing some research on it, I didn't have time to do. I don't remember if it was the allowance of professional athletes first, or if it was the allowance of athletes from one country to be able to compete under a different country's flag. But that's been going on for both of those things have been going on for a few years. And I think that was the downfall of the Olympics because all it is anymore is it's about money.
Yeah. I mean, the World Baseball Classic is like that to an extent too. I laugh at some of these players and they're like, oh, I'm playing for Team Italy because I'm of Italian descent. And it's like, you're not Italian, dude. It's like they're not even citizen. It's like a joke, you know? I mean, there's only a few countries that really matter. And arguably Puerto Rico, if we're gonna have a World Baseball Classic, should be part of America. Right, Bad Bunny? They're supposed to be part of America, aren't they? But they have their own team. But anyway.
We're going to talk about the Winter Olympics. We can't let it pass that this week is the anniversary of the Miracle on Ice.
Yeah.
February, I forget
1980.
I think it's February 22nd, 1980. We're recording this right now. It's February 18th? So either way, whether it's the 20th or the 22nd, it might be the 20th, actually. The 22nd the 22nd is Washington's birthday. Was it on Washington's birthday? I don't remember. But if we're going to talk about the Winter Olympics, that's what I would want to talk about. The Miracle on Ice, what it meant to the country, how demoralized we were. And frankly, you know, I enjoyed it when we had our amateurs going up against the professionals from the East Bloc. I realized the deck was stacked against us, but we still tended to win more than we lost. And
Yeah.
that was a truly heroic and heartwarming story. Talking about this
Right.
commie sympathizer who's competing for China.
Yeah.
Blank
I,
her.
and again, I mean, I really should watch that movie with my kids because um, how do you impart that to a young generation of today?
There's
Because
no
you
way.
can't put in perspective the things that I was just talking about and sort of making light of a little bit with having the Soviets versus the U.S. America.
Even the
But that
movies,
was such a big deal. It was a big
right? I mean,
deal.
even the movies, they don't take into account the political context of, Carter and his
Yeah.
malaise and, the hostages in Iran and, the failed helicopter rescue and boycotting the threats of boycotting the Summer Olympics in Moscow. And I mean, we, as Americans, I was 12 years old at the time, but I was already really involved in politics. And I couldn't understand, how we could be so inept against the Iranians and just, we were the superpower of the world. What were we afraid of? But we were afraid, and it was a really scary time to be an American. And
Mhm.
those kids in the Miracle on Ice gave us all hope and something great. And the only other thing that I remember, and the present generation can't understand it, but the game was played on was televised on tape delay.
Yeah.
We didn't get to see it live. I mean, I still remember hearing updates or getting a phone call. I mean, I remember who my best friend was at the time, and I don't remember who told me first, but
Yeah.
I just remember hearing, you got to watch the game tonight. You got to watch, they
Right.
did something great, or I don't remember exactly how it went, but
Yeah. And
it
Al
was a
Michaels
tape delay,
call.
and
Yeah.
what?
Al Michaels with that call.
I
That was
remember those
one
times
of the
very
games.
differently.
Um,
Oh yeah, Dick,
I was gonna say real quick, Ed, that wasn't even the gold medal game.
right,
That was a semifinal. They had to go up
right,
against what was Sweden or Finland. It was like
Finland,
a really
and
good Finland team that they still had to
and
beat. They did.
and they were losing after the second period of that Finland game. They were down 2-1, and they scored 3 goals in the third period to win the gold
Yeah.
medal.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah.
What's your recollection, Dick?
A whole lot of training and waiting to see if we was flying overseas to go enforce rules. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
at that time, you brought up the Cold War, and in the service, the Cold War was real. I mean,
Mhm.
and that's what we spent our entire lives doing was
Yeah.
preparing to go.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, I think that to take the flip side real quick too, to put things in perspective, is like those Soviet athletes losing to the Americans like that is like they were going to get sent to the gulag. They were going to go to Siberia. You know what I mean? Like people, that's another thing. Like you try to impart to younger generation. You don't understand like the pressure that was on those Soviet athletes. It was like there was a gun to their head. You better win, or you're in big freaking trouble. You know?
Well, and I mean, they had no experience with losing. They didn't know
No.
how to come back because they just, they beat everybody.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Just amazing. It is the number one sports moment in my lifetime. And as much as a Mets fan, the Bill Buckner thing is close to my heart. Objective enough to say for the population, for the country, as Americans, that is the number one moment. It'll never be topped. There's nothing that will ever top that.
Well, I don't know
Right?
about ever, but it's far and away the top sports moment of my lifetime too.
Yep. All right, so I'm kind of glad I brought up the Olympics. I'll get my one last thing out of the way, and I'll leave the floor to you guys. So we just passed, I think yesterday was the fifth anniversary of Rush's death, his passing. I was reading a column by Mark Stein about it, which is worth going back and checking out. And he said one line in there that I think a lot of us can relate to is when you go around the dial now on talk radio and in the afternoon, there's just nothing that has replaced it. Rush Limbaugh was irreplaceable. And there's some human beings that have lived on this earth, and they're just not replaceable. They're one of a kind, um, and that's it. And I think about that in terms of the presidency as well. It took us over 30 years to go from Reagan to Trump, who I think we all generally think has been has been good and has been impactful in a way that few other presidents are, but they don't come around very often. And special human beings aren't like
The,
Rush aren't there every day and don't come around all the time either. So
the comparison for me is seeing Turning Point USA without Charlie Kirk. I mean,
yeah,
it's still a good organization. It's still doing some good things, but Charlie Kirk is irreplaceable in the
hmm
same exact way that Rush was and is irreplaceable.
right,
I can't tell you how often I think we would benefit so much from Rush's
insight.
insights into
Yeah,
what's going on in the world today.
yep,
He had a way of looking at things and dissecting things that very few people have, and he just had a gift. And there are lots of good, thoughtful people. Clay Travis and Buck Sexton have replaced him to the extent that they can replace him. They do a decent job, but they're not Rush, and there is
yeah,
no Rush. There's no replacement for Rush.
yeah.
I
All
guess
these
February 17th was his anniversary when he left us. I think it's a hole and a void that will never be filled.
Yeah, I agree. He always had a unique take, and Rush was a happy warrior. And I think that's where, we've talked about this at times before, where, yeah, we like Mark Levin and, maybe you can still tolerate Hannity, but they don't have that sense of humor and the capability of ridicule, which Rush always had to take aim at the left, whether it was a parody song or what have you, you know what I mean? And
Yep.
I miss him. I agree with you completely. I wish you were still with us to provide those special insights that he had. Actually, I lied. I have one other quick issue that I wanted to touch on, and that's we just passed by President's Day, and you know what? It really irks me that George Washington does not have his own holiday the way he used to. And I think each year it bothers me a little more because we could talk about this president, that president, we could have debates even about Lincoln. But George Washington is the founder of our country, and obviously the first president, but we would not have a country without George Washington, right? He
Not
saved
just that. I mean,
he led the war for independence. We never win a war for independence. He set the tone after leaving, after becoming the first. I don't think I need to say a lot
his willingness to relinquish power.
to relinquish power. Exactly. Um, but the founder of our country deserves his own freaking day, and it's meaningful. It's meaningful for younger people to see that and understand it, not say, "Oh, it's President's Day," because you know what? There's a lot of presidents I don't celebrate. I don't celebrate the racist Woodrow Wilson or LBJ. I think was also a racist and not a good guy. And we know people on the other side are going to say there's going to a lot of presidents they don't want to celebrate either, and they certainly aren't going to want to celebrate Trump as part of that banner. Okay, and I get all that, but the more I
Actually,
think
I think
about it,
that's the whole purpose of President's Day, right? The
it,
left is the
it,
one. The left wants to equate all the shittiest presidents with George
with the
Washington.
great ones. And
Yeah.
just like I was saying about Rush, there are only certain great ones that come along. There's only certain unique ones that are worth celebrating. We don't celebrate them all. I don't celebrate Jimmy Carter. I don't celebrate LBJ. I don't celebrate Wilson. I don't celebrate Bill Clinton. I don't celebrate Barack Obama. But the founder of our country should have his own day, and there should be lessons to the younger generation about what he did. I'm sure they learned some of it, but it should be in the forefront every year. That's my last issue of the week. All right. Dick, you got anything we didn't cover?
No, I think we hit most of it. Well, you know what? There was one more in the packet that we didn't talk about, and it goes back to the voter ID. But Trump, as he is wont to do, I think, put his foot in his mouth a little bit on this one. But he's apparently put it out there that if Congress doesn't get this SAVE Act passed, he's going to issue an executive order requiring voter ID for the 2026 election.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
I'm not sure where he gets the authority for that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He doesn't have the authority, but I use the word "but" cautiously because that should be a period and that should be the end of the inquiry. But I think that he's trying to fight the way Democrats do, and he's willing to do one of two things: either have a court uphold him or have a court strike it down and use that court decision as fodder against the Democrats later, and as part of the Republican election strategy, whether in 26 or in 28. So I think he's just trying to, sometimes in order to get from A to Z, you have to make stops at B through Y, and this is just a stop between B and Y. I agree wholeheartedly, Dick, that there is no authority for him to do that. But what I think he's doing is he's trying to sharpen the issue and sharpen the focus in the public on what the problem is. Not just the SAVE Act, but the judiciary. I mean, that would be an instance of the judiciary getting it right, but setting themselves up as a punching bag, which is, parenthetically, I'd say that's exactly what I think is happening with the birthright citizenship case. I agree that birthright citizenship is awful and should not be American law, but all the arguments about what the Civil Rights Act of 1868 said don't mean anything. I mean, the 14th Amendment to me is very clear, and I think the court is going to rule very likely 9-0 against him, but Trump will just use them as a punching bag to say, see, this is why we need judicial reform. And that's okay. I'm okay with that.
My problem is with all of the other executive orders he's issued, as far as I can tell going through them, they've all been supported by law. You can point to the law and support them, or the Constitution, and you can't with this one. That's where I have trouble with this one.
But here's how I push back on that. The Democrats are acting so illegally, and so, maybe illegally is the wrong word, but so outside the spirit of what the compact of the Constitution is, that maybe it calls for some stronger action than just trying to follow the dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. I mean, did the framers really anticipate that some state was going to allow mail-in ballots that weren't verified for citizenship and even identity? I mean, it's so, what the Democrats are doing in the places where they control is so beyond the pale that, I would rather that Trump issue that executive order than start a civil war over it, even though I think a civil war is frankly justified over it. But I don't encourage it, and I don't think that's the right thing to do. So, again, there's no authority. We're in a full agreement on that. But I mean, how do you deal with something that's just completely treasonous? And not just one person or 100 people. I mean, it's a whole freaking political party. What do you do?
So I will tell you how you deal with it, so we don't go too far over time here. We know that states have been violating existing federal law. You send in every agent you have to go through their voter records, and everyone you identify that is illegally voted, you charge somebody. Somebody registered them. That's already on the books. You got to be a U.S. citizen to vote. We don't need the SAVE Act to do that. It's already in the law. The only thing we're adding is you got to show an ID when you get there that proves you're in. The law is already there. Send out, I don't care if you got to put every FBI agent we have, take immigration folks off of immigration enforcement in that other arena, use them to audit the books of every state.
The states aren't cooperating. They're not going to turn over their voter records or their
So you go in there with force.
Okay. So
you didn't have any problem going in with force into Trump's house.
Like I said, I think a civil war is warranted or military action is warranted. But if he can accomplish the same thing with an executive order, I think I'd rather him do it that way, even if it's got less constitutional support. I'm not disagreeing with you, Dick. I mean, we're in basic agreement. I'm just, that's sort of my rejoinder to what you're saying, that, maybe, we're not dealing with a situation where the courts can really help us. Ordinarily, when you have these kinds of things, you should be able to submit the disagreement to a court or submit it to Congress. But you've got this completely treasonous faction, which is the Democrat Party, and it's, 40% of the country, 40% of the country. To uproot it is going to take a civil war. And, so if he can use the method that's short of civil war, I can't say I oppose it.
You've heard my position on this before. We're already in a civil war. We just haven't lined up our armies on either side of the field.
I hear you.
All right, Eddie Guns, cleanup hitter. Go.
I think I want to just point out, two legal battles that are going on. One is the social media trial out in California. It's still ongoing. There's no verdict, so it's hard to really just debate it too much. But I'm a little bit leery of the claims that the plaintiffs are making in the case. Basically, the plaintiffs are suing social media companies like Meta and Facebook, and I forget who all the defendants are, but social media companies are the defendants, and the claim is that the algorithms in the social media programs are intentionally addictive towards children, and that the plaintiff's children committed suicide after taking part on their social media platforms. And I don't doubt that there's some truth to the argument, but to me, I mean, I hate hitting somebody who's down, but I mean, to me, the bad parenting overrides that to me.
So, on that topic, Zuckerberg appeared before the Senate today to defend their actions, and they were posting internal emails that were quite damning to his company with regard to that very issue. Oh my God, we've created what they call it, basically an addictive thing. And cheering on how that was good, so good for business, that this is so addictive. And that coupled with the fact that you had two of those social media companies settle in a lawsuit, I think makes it very difficult for these other ones to win it.
Well, I'm not going to predict one way or the other how it's going to go. It's a relatively big news story, and to me, people do bad things all the time, and not all those bad things are compensable. And I think that Facebook has done bad things. I mean, it's sort of like 7-Eleven selling the Slurpees and in the big old size. I mean, I don't doubt that those are unhealthy and they're bad things, but at some point, me or if my kid goes and buys them on a regular basis, there's got to be some personal responsibility for the choices that you make. I mean, I think addictive is, I struggle with this because I see my son be addicted to some of these programs too. But I mean, in the end, addictive is sort of the wrong word because it's not alcohol, it's not drugs, there's not a physical addiction. And
there is a physical addiction.
Yeah, I think there is. I think it is because
it's the dopamine hits in the brain.
Yeah.
Yep. Go ahead. I don't mean to
No,
cut you
I
off.
mean, I'm trying to find the right word, but what Dick is saying is right. It's getting you excited. It keeps you fired up because I know I'm guilty of this when I'm online and I'm on my computer all the time. You know what I mean?
One
And then
of
it's
the
like
comments,
it affects your sleep. It has an impact on you physically. There's no question.
one of the comments in one of the people's emails was that one of the problems they were having or going to have was on this reward thing. So I get so many likes. A like is kind of it's a reward in the brain, and it is getting harder and harder to generate those dopamine hits. Because if you get 3 on it and you get 3 on it and you get 3 likes on it, everything is just 3 likes, you settle out, but you're looking for more. So how do we make it so that, okay, now you're getting 5, now you're getting 10, so that you're constantly upping that dopamine hit?
Yeah. But wasn't there also another
I say dopamine, I think that's the right chemical.
Wasn't there another suit going on about a family that said that their kid committed suicide because of the algorithms and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's AI. That's separate.
The AI stuff. Right. Yeah. I mean,
similar, but separate.
I don't think this stuff is necessarily cut and dry.
Well, the other legal case that I just, it's pending, and that's the Supreme Court has still delayed its rulings on Trump's tariffs. And the delay has been so long. They originally had suggested that they were going to be issuing rulings in January. and we're now more than halfway through February, and we still have no rulings. And I'm speculating here, but I'm thinking that maybe they initially wanted to strike them down, but I think that they might be seeing the direction of the winds turning, and maybe they're, Roberts is changing his mind and trying to justify the tariffs. I mean, it's just speculation, but I think it's noteworthy that we still don't have a ruling on the tariff issue after being led to believe we were going to get it shortly after New Year's.
On the tariffs, I think that there are probably 5 votes for the tariffs on the Supreme Court. And I think you're right about Roberts. I think Roberts is just trying to decide what side of the argument he wants to come down on.
Well, those are my hits.
All right. All right, gentlemen. Another